Advisory. Some episodes of the 1836 podcast are not intended for all audiences due to details that might be considered disturbing. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
This episode of the 1836 podcast shares the real connections between Arkansas and the novel True Grit. Charles Portis was born on December 28, 1933, in El Dorado, Arkansas. Portis grew up immersed in the state's red dirt, river valleys, and storied past. His childhood unfolded across Hamburg's piney woods and Little Rock's vibrant streets, where he absorbed the dry wit, biblical cadences, and fierce pride of Arkansans. After serving in the Marine Corps during the Korean War, Portis honed his craft as a journalist for the Arkansas Gazette and the New York Herald Tribune. Still, Arkansas stayed his inspiration, its voices, pastors, storekeepers, aging veterans, molding his stories. In 1968, he published True Grit, a novel that wasn't just a Western but a tribute to Arkansas's landscapes and resilient spirit. True Grit followed Mattie Ross, a 14-year-old girl from Yell County, Arkansas, whose father, Frank, was killed by a drifter named Tom Chaney in the 1870s. In the novel, the story is recounted by an older Mattie, which traced her quest for justice. She traveled to Fort Smith, a rugged frontier town, and hired Rooster Cogburn, a one-eyed, hard-drinking United States Deputy Marshal with a questionable moral compass. They were joined by Ermal LaBeef, a vain Texas Ranger chasing Chaney for another crime. Mattie, Rooster, and LaBeef pursued the killer into Indian Territory, now Oklahoma, where Chaney rode with Ned Pepper's outlaw gang. Through dangerous terrain and a final showdown, where Rooster boldly charged Pepper's gang, Mattie faced Chaney, winning but suffering injuries and loss. Her journey, rooted in Arkansas's tough heart, ended back in her home state. The book was adapted into movies, first in 1969 with John Wayne as Rooster, then in 2010 by the Coen brothers with Jeff Bridges playing Rooster. True Grit captivated audiences with its humor, violence, and moral clarity, all tied to Arkansas's frontier reputation. Its characters sprang from the state's history and Portis's memories. Mattie, a stubborn Presbyterian teenage girl, mirrored the determined spirit of Arkansas's rural women. Some linked her to Helen Spence, who was born in 1912 on a White River houseboat, who later in 1931 shot and killed her father's murderer in a DeWitt, Arkansas courtroom. Portis, a meticulous researcher, likely drew from such tales, blending them with the resilient women of his youth and other literary figures. His study of Fort Smith's federal court under Judge Isaac C. Parker, where women sought justice, further shaped Mattie's tenacity. Rooster Cogburn, the weathered Marshal, personified Arkansas's frontier. Rooster's one-eyed glare, drunken swagger, and Confederate scars captured Fort Smith's historic saloons and shootouts. Many tied him to John Franklin Cogburn, a Montgomery County, Arkansas outlaw known for a deadly 1880 shootout, who was also called Rooster by some. Others pointed to Calvin Whitson, a one-eyed United States Deputy Marshal under Judge Parker in Fort Smith, or marshals like Heck Thomas and Bass Reeves. Portis portrayed Rooster as a composite character. His claim of riding with Quantrill's raiders linked him to Arkansas's Civil War wounds. Rooster emerged as a legend, spun from the state's larger-than-life rogues. Ned Pepper, the charismatic outlaw, reflected Arkansas's lawless borderlands. Though no single figure matched him, Portis drew on Jesse James's defiance, Bellstar's criminal ties, and Fort Smith's court records. Some speculated Ned Pepper echoed Ned Christie. Ned Christie was a Cherokee outlaw that killed an Arkansas United States Marshal. Christie himself was later killed in 1892 after evading marshals from Judge Parker's Fort Smith court. Ned Pepper's gang, hiding beyond the Arkansas River, embodied the chaos that Fort Smith's lawmen often fought. Ermel LaBeef, the Texas Ranger, served as an outsider, his pride mirroring real Rangers who rode with Arkansas deputies, though it's unknown if any specific figure actually inspired him. Tom Chaney, the cowardly killer, recalled the petty drifters of Arkansas's post-Civil War underbelly, his story drawn from court records rather than a single person. Minor characters enriched the tale. Colonel G. Stonehill, a shrewd Fort Smith trader, reflected the town's merchants, while Judge Parker, the hanging judge, grounded the story in historical truth. True Grit captured Arkansas at a crossroads, where its Reconstruction wounds met the West's wild promises. Born of Portis's El Dorado roots and Little Rock days, the novel immortalized Fort Smith's grit in Yell County's hills. The films carried Arkansas's soul to the world, its dusty streets evoking the state's essence. In Fort Smith, the True Grit Trail and Parker's Gallows at the National Historic Site draw visitors, while Helen Spence's grave in St. Charles whispers echoes of Mattie Ross. Portis, who died in 2020, never confirmed ties between his characters to real Arkansas figures, letting True Grit stand as Arkansas itself, a land where history and myth tangle. Mattie, Rooster, and their world walked Arkansas's earth, spoke its tongue, and fought for its honor. The novel testified to the state's heart, a place that, like Mattie Ross, faced the world with relentless resolve.